It's time to thread the Husqvarna Viking Huskylock S-25. Now, throughout all these videos, we are going to be showing you things like be careful of this or watch that. And if you do everything in the right order, things are going to be smooth. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull this part all the way up to the top. Now, when we put our spools on, we're going to actually do these in color order. And then since these have a little bit of wiggle when you put them on these little spool pins back here, we're going to go ahead and put the spool cone holders up in the middle here. And that will help kind of just stabilize them just a little bit as we go through our threading. So I'm going to just go ahead and put each of these. The color coding is nice if you haven't ever done any stitching before. This will help you kind of identify which thread does which area. And honestly, in a lot of projects, it really doesn't matter what color it is. The only thing that really matters is if I pull my seal open a little bit, I'll always see what is on the outside needle. So since we are going to thread up with the 4-thread overlock, and that's technique number 3 on your screen, that is the one that's actually going to show. So I'm going to go ahead and take each of these, and we're going to kind of go over the top as we do this. Now I'm going to pull this up to the very high point, but that's what I'm going to do as I do each of these. Now notice which color I'm starting off with. I'm starting with the green. The green is the upper looper. So we're going to go ahead behind the little pre-tensioner here, there's a little kind of a little clip, and that is all, most everything is going to be clicked in. There's a little opening somewhere, so find where you're doing that so that when you look at it, every thread runs through the guide and it doesn't kind of overlap and come back itself. So make sure you're always clicking in the right direction. A couple things you want to have handy are tweezers and, because you have one in your accessory box, a needle threader. So those are, I'll show you how those are going to work as we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take each of these individual, thread it all the way through. We'll come back. We're going to do the lower looper second. We always do the upper looper first. We always do the lower looper second. And then we just come over here and do the right needle, then the left needle. Actually, it doesn't matter on your needles. So if you kind of get started, just make sure that if you are using the right needle, it always goes to the right needle tension. Don't flip-flop those or kind of scoot to the side without going into the right needle that you're expecting to go through. So I also like to hold as I go to make sure that your thread gets in the tension disc. So let me talk about the tension disc. Just like your sewing machine, when your presser foot is up, so make sure it's actually all the way up, those tension discs are open, and you can kind of make sure that they go all the way down. And when you look in here, you should make sure that it actually is going kind of in between where the discs are curved. There is a slight chance that if you don't kind of get it off to the side, it will go beside the tension disc, and then, well, that doesn't work at all. So, and then by just rethreading the whole machine, that would fix the problem that you might not be able to see. And sometimes too, when I'm done and things aren't working right and I can't see any differences happening down below, I will just clip all the threads, start over. It's faster, and honestly, most of the time it fixes it. So knowing how to thread the machine is actually really important here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see where we're going, and I'm going to use tweezers so you can really see what is going on. All right, so we're going to open up the front door. Okay, so here's where we're going to go. We're always using the guide that's right below the groove, the tension groove that's going. We're doing the upper looper. So this is color green. So I'm going all the way over and finding where the next one is. Notice it's going to be above this area. And then there's 2 green ones down here, and they're both kind of open. Sometimes what I'll do is hold one in one hand and then slide my tweezers with my thread in them as you go. And then we're just, so 1, or after here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then come up here. The next one is not color coded, but it's right at the end, kind of the tail end of where we're going. The upper looper is the part, and it has a little hole at the very end. That's the part that goes above the foot. When you turn your hand wheel, you'll be able to see that it goes above the foot and in front of the needle. So just position that if that's not already where you can go, and so you can poke it right through the upper looper. Now that hole is actually quite large, so that's an easy one to thread there. You will find that you can put your threads over the top of the foot. You could wiggle it between the foot and the knife and send it out to the back side. Just make sure that nothing has gotten hooked where it's not supposed to when you're doing that threading. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach behind my serger and I'm pulling the blue color, following the little guides just like we did before in the upper looper. My lower looper. My presser foot is still up, so now we're going to do the blue. Now the blue is the one that people say they often have a little hard time threading. So just follow along. And again, you've got the little color coding right here. They even tell you which color to do in which order. There's a little, I'm going to move this so you can see it a little bit. Yes. See where it says 1, 2, the 3, that's only if you're doing purple, but 1, 2, and then 4, 5 is the order we're doing it. So again, there's little guides. Just follow the blue coloring as you go. There's one more way back here, and I'm going to sometimes dip my head in here to be able to see it. Now, for lower loopers, you have this guy here. He looks like a little pointy part with a hole in it. That is not what we're threading. He is the cover stitch looper. And if you ever wonder, okay, well, which one should I be threading? Because they're both kind of pointing. This is the one we're actually going to right here. This one is in lining up with the 3 holes that are across the front of the throat plate. When we're doing a surged edge, okay, and that's for cover stitch. But when we're doing a surged edge with the 2 needles, they are positioned back away from that. And so the 2 loopers are in lining up with the needles. So always look for the ones that are further back for most of your regular stitching. Okay, so let's just go ahead. I'm going to just get the little end off here. And what I'm going to do next is actually thread the upper looper now, or lower looper. I am not done yet, but I actually have found that if I do this part next, there we go. And again, make sure nothing gets hooked around anything. There is a lever right here that we are going to lift. Now when you do this, you're going to notice there's kind of some prongs that are going to swoop the thread to the very back elbow of the lower looper. Now if your prongs hit the throat plate, and sometimes they do, just adjust the hand wheel over here to move it out of position. But I'm holding the thread up here for a little tension, taking that lever, swooping that. Oh, I had it here. There we go. Get it back here so it's in position. There we go. And I'm going to lift this all the way up with my index finger until it stops. Now once it stops and it gets positioned and it gets hooked into the very far back part, you will not be able to see that. But if you don't thread that, well, life is not good. Here's how you know you have threaded it. The thread will lay in the groove that is following itself all the way up to the lower looper eye. So my thread is actually in there now. That's the hardest part of the serger. So I'm going to just kind of wiggle it to the back here. It should actually kind of hop over the upper looper thread. So of the cross swords that is happening here, this thread that goes through this little hole goes over the upper looper. So we're actually pretty set here. I'm going to readjust so we can see how the needles are threaded next. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do right needle, then left needle. We'll take the thread up from the spool, up over the little stand, hook it in the back like we did the other 2. Presser foot is still up, so the thread's laying down in the tension disc. I'm kind of holding it at the top while I'm pulling it down into that area. We're going to come straight across, kind of underneath the housing here. And then both the threads are going to end up in this little mouth area. That is kind of like a take-up lever of your sewing machine. So threading this part of the machine is just like threading a sewing machine. There's a couple little grooves back here, and sometimes it feels like you should be in like one of the little channels. Try the best you can. Honestly, I haven't found if being in one or the other, or if they kind of get piled on top of each other, it really makes a difference. Oh, now we're ready for the needle threader. So lower your presser foot. And it gives you a little bit more room. On your needle threader, you will notice that on 2 sides, so this side and the opposite side, there's a little notch. The notch is always up. When you actually are going to put it on the needle itself, it's going to slide down the shank of the needle. Well, inside here is a little piece of metal that's going to push and plunge the thread through the eye of the needle, as long as it's straight. I'm noticing this one has a little bend in it. We'll see how that works. Okay, so first off, you're going to take the thread and go side to side in his mouth. So I've got the little notch up here. The thread is laying side to side in the little groove. I'm going to start about halfway up on the needle, and if I feel the little piece of metal stopping in the groove of the needle, then all I need to do is slide down, and when it gets to the eye, it's going to plunge the thread through and leave a little loop that you can just pull through with your tweezers. So easy. Might take a little practice. I'm going to just slip this behind this little guide right there, and again, we'll just slide it out the back. Now, we lowered the presser foot when we threaded it, so we're going to lift up the presser foot. We're going to go ahead and now for our left needle. Since we're talking needles, there is specific serger needles, so this is not something that you want to just reach over to your sewing machine to get extra needles. Make sure you don't run out of the needles for your serger. All right, so we're really just following the same path that we did before, just over the top in the little mouth area and down, and then we'll use that needle threader again. And just kind of flip that around. Super easy here. One of the things that I've sometimes started to recommend in our class is actually a flashlight to have close by. You know those cute little LED flashlights that are easy to get, and it allows you to kind of, if you have trouble seeing into your serger, maybe your lighting isn't perfect, that is a good item to have close by. If you don't, but you have a handy dandy phone, you've got a very bright light on your phone, and that can also slide into your serger or brighten up your serger as you're using it. See how easy that needle threader is? Just give it a little practice, but if that little pin gets bent, that way you definitely want to just either rebend it or get a new one, because boy, is that a time saver when you're doing that. Okay, now what do? We're going to go ahead and close up the door. And all the threads are loose, so you don't have that continuous chain that you're looking for. So sometimes a little trick, and I do this more for my class, is I'll have them fold their fabric in half. By the way, we're always going to serge off the fold, and then that way we can open it and test and see how our stitches look on the inside as well as the outside. Sometimes what I'll do is actually just shimmy the fabric right underneath the foot. Why? Because then that way the first stitch that this serger takes after being freshly threaded is going to be in the fabric. So sometimes when there's not fabric, on occasion all those threads kind of get going and then they don't get to where they need to be. And it's just one way as a newbie to really make sure that things are good. Now once you slide your fabric underneath, you're going to slide it right up to where that knife actually is. You can, so it won't go any further. Make sure you lower down that presser foot. Now on this serger, it's going to feel like you're lifting it because it's opposite of how a sewing machine is. But just go ahead and put that down. If you want, you can even hold these threads just so you can keep them in the order. One last thing, if you've kind of monkeyed with the serger for any reason, you've turned the hand wheel, I want you to make sure that the needle threads, the last two threads that you threaded, are going right out the needles and to the back. They should not be kind of going down underneath your throat plate, and if they are, things are not going to work. So that's why we always thread it in the order that we do it, so everything is where it needs to be. Those needle threads are threaded last for a reason. I'm going to just hand turn the first couple of stitches, turning my hand wheel towards me, and I can see instantly if those threads are going to get all in the right place and position. Now, once you start to step on the foot control, that chain that you're used to is going to be all threaded. Okay, you can start to cut off a little something on the end here if you want. And we're going to go right off the edge. I'm going to gently pull out the back so I have that little chain. You can go about 3 or 4 inches. And you've got multiple options. You've got a little thread cutter on this back corner, which you can come up to and pull your fabric down. You also can bring the thread itself to the front and cut it off. You don't have to hold that. You'll see me kind of just whip it around and do it. But sometimes people like to make sure that this little tail is not left in there and almost sticks out the back side. So whatever works for you. So what are we looking for? Ooh, I love it. We're looking good. And I might even just do this. Once I run one strip, I like to start again. Now that the serger is all set up, we can go ahead and step on the foot control, let the fabric get pulled in, cut off what you just did. So slide the fabric far enough over that this little half seam is removed. Here we go, and done. Okay, so what are we looking for? On the front side, it's going to look like 2 rows of stitching on the top. We've got our orange or yellow and our red side by side. Our upper looper, that was our green thread. That was the first one we threaded. And then on the back side, we have the blue going back and forth. That was the lower looper. Now, what you're looking for on the back is that you see little tick marks from the needle thread versus loops. Don't want loops. Little tick marks. And then you also want to see a nice straight line all the way down. If for any reason it's a little wiggly, not so good, we'll kind of retrack and make sure all the little guides were caught. Also, too, that allows us to open up and peek inside and see what we have. And then remember, if you put your color, like if we wanted to have if this was what we were sewing on cream, I would have put a cream thread in my outside left needle, and then when I'd pull open, I would just see a little bit of cream, and then that would match. So, which is nice because you don't need the big cones. So when you need to match like an odd color, if you're sewing on hot pink, you just need a small cone of hot pink that matches, and then just put that on the outside needle. So looking good. This is what we're looking for when you get a perfect stitch.